Do you still feel comfortable keeping your job as finance minister?
I feel I have the support I need to do my job and to focus on
Chrystia Freeland tried to have a press conference to announce a 30-year amortization option for insured mortgages. However, the media had another topic in mind: her job.
Let's take a look.
Calvi Leon from the Toronto Star. Minister Freeland, how do you feel about some of your colleagues believing you should be shuffled out of the finance portfolio in order to signal a major new direction for the government?
She didn't look too happy.
No. And she's probably especially not happy because that was from the Toronto Star.
Yeah, they're typically extremely pro-liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they sent their only reporter.
Their only conservative reporter in the entire company.
Maybe.
Could you imagine?
But, it's funny because they talk for about 30 minutes and the first question is, oh, your job. Nobody likes you here, man. What do you have to say about that? But this is the thing. The sympathetic part of you may, kind of feel bad for, who am I kidding? Nobody feels bad for Christopher.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel something. I think it's kind of dirty the way that Trudeau's like, hey, that budget that we created and that you built based on my platform? I don't like it, or Canadians don't like it, is what I should say.
Fault.
Now it's your fault. Yeah. I don't know if sympathy is the right word, but it's not as satisfying as it should be to see her be thrown under the bus.
Honk, honk.
Thank you for the question. I absolutely take the point of view of our caucus, of my caucus colleagues, really, really seriously.
You should.
I think Chrystia Freeland takes everything really, really seriously. Because every time she's asked a question, she says, I take insert topic here very seriously.
But you know why that is, right?
Well, yeah. It's
stalling tactic.
Yeah, it's filler so she can think about what to say.
And that's really what media training teaches you to do, is if you're not prepared for the question, you're prepared with like a filler while you think up the question in your head. So you're spitting out the filler while you're thinking up here about what you're actually going to say.
Now, in all seriousness, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, I can't do it.
It's really hard to do. So
you guys have seen me live. I can't do it.
You're saying this filler and you're trying to think very, very quickly. Okay, what direction am I going to go now? If your media team has prepared you at all, if they're worth their salt, then you kind of know, a couple of different ways that you should be answering this question. She should know how she should answer this question because she's been asked it at almost every single press conference at this point. And it's not going to stop until the summer's over and her job is gone. And I think she knows that that's going to happen. And she's just trying to sludge her way through the rest of the summer until that happens.
Yeah, I think she sees the writing on the wall, and I really believe it's going to be either like really late August or in September, like right before the House sits again.
Because otherwise Trudeau would have come out and said, hey, listen, I've heard all the rumors. They're not true. It's the furthest thing from the truth. Christia's here to stay, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, he's not really sticking up for her.
No, he's just like, we have lots of confidence in Chrystia Freeland. Just like we had lots of confidence in Bill Morneau before we started putting out all of these nasty rumors about him.
Right. Like, he's not doing anything to dispel these nasty rumors.
Right.
I mean, you've been a boss. If somebody was talking about, so-and-so on your team's going to get fired, and that was not going to happen, like absolutely under no circumstances, you'd be standing up for them.
Right. And you'd be unequivocal about it. There's been nothing unequivocally said about Chrystia Freeland. And even her, she said, well, I'm just focusing on my job.
Our government is our caucus, and our government's policies need to be based on conversations within caucus. For me, my focus is on working hard to deliver for Canadians every single day. It is on housing, building more homes faster, and putting in place measures like the 30-year mortgage amortization to make it possible for young Canadians to buy their first home. It's focused on making life more affordable with programs like our National System of Early Learning and Childcare and Dental Care. And it is focused on economic growth with programs like our support for AI, our support for R&D with a $5 billion investment in universities in postgrads. So that's where my focus is. It's on Canada and Canadians and working hard with all my caucus colleagues to deliver that.
I think what's been kind of demonstrated is the last thing that the universities need is more money. Number one.
Yeah.
And you're so focused on delivering for Canadians and you're working hard. Well, evidently you're not working hard enough, because to say, well, we're introducing a 30-year amortization rather than a 25 for insured mortgages is going to help young people afford a home. Well, not really. So A, you're putting them into their mortgages for 5 years longer. And I get it. It's an option. But still, if you've ever looked at it, it doesn't really make that much of a difference on your payments. Sure, it's going to, tick off a few percentage points per month. But when you're talking about houses costing over $1 million in Canada, and these are not luxury estates, that's not really going to move the needle a lot for people that are trying to buy their first home or even their third home.
I think it's because many young couples are not able to qualify for a 25-year mortgage, which is standard. I recall Pierre did a video not that long ago that he was speaking with a young couple, probably a little bit younger than us, and one was a veterinarian and one was a lawyer, and they weren't able to qualify for a mortgage because the housing prices were just that astronomical. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think possibly it was in Oakville, Ontario. Don't quote me though. But like if you stretch it to 30 years, maybe they can afford a mortgage. It's putting people in debt for longer. And it's a result of the housing prices being completely out of control. But on the flip side, I really don't know how this government is going to get the housing prices under control without causing some sort of crisis, because everybody who bought at the peak is going to lose a lot of money.
Right, and that's going to happen within the next 8 to 12 months. It's going to come due over the next 8 to 12 months.
Do you still feel comfortable keeping your job as finance minister?
I feel I have the support I need to do my job and to focus on what my job is, which is delivering for Canada and Canadians.
She is so uncomfortable. Like the way she just stood there for about like a 3 count with her eyes closed. She's just like, get me out of here. Get me out of here.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if it was me and people were asking me questions about being let go from this job that I assume she loves and that, I thought I was doing a good job at, and everybody just thinks I'm horrible, I'd probably be pretty upset too. Like, I don't know how I wouldn't break down crying. But on the other hand, it's really hard to have any sympathy for Chrystia Freeland because she has made life for Canadians so miserable and so unaffordable. She does not deserve to be in that position.
This is the lady that was laughing and being giddy when she was talking about seizing the bank accounts of people during the Emergencies Act. So she's not getting any sympathy from anyone.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's what I mean. Like, she was happy to be taking away people's ability to pay their mortgage, to be able to pay their kids to go to school if they were in post-secondary.
To be able to run their businesses.
Yeah, to be able to run their businesses, to buy groceries. Like, she just didn't care. All she could think of was, if I do this, I'm going to shut down the convoy. And why did they want to shut down the convoy? Because the folks in the convoy had beliefs that were opposite to the Liberal Party. They were defying the Liberals, is what it was.
Well, and they were making them look bad because
Right.
the government couldn't do anything. And the other thing, in this whole charade is that, she's the one who's not qualified for this job. She's a journalist, and and a historian. Great. Doesn't really make you qualified to be a finance minister. Yes, I've run budgets. Would I ever be the finance minister of Canada? Hell no. Because I know I'm not qualified to do that. So, it takes some humility to be able to say, I don't think I should have that job. You may want to give it to somebody who's more qualified. But, the trouble is Trudeau basically fired everybody else who was qualified and ran them over with the Liberal bus, as we've seen on some of the Vesper memes on Twitter. But this is the problem when you give people a job not based on qualifications but what they look like.
If I may, I am one of those caucus colleagues, so I'm happy to address this issue. We're standing in Toronto. We're in a hockey town. It's the off season. So what do people do? They spend all their time speculating on whether John Tavares or Austin Matthews should be the number one center. The focus we have is on the team. And I can tell you, I talk to my caucus colleagues every single day, and we have complete confidence in Chrystia Freeland as a finance minister. So these whispers in the shadows, and that's what they are, take them for what they're worth. It's like listening to talk radio, sports radio. You've got all kinds of interesting ideas. But look, we are a team as a caucus, and you know what that means? It means we talk to each other, we work together, we throw around ideas. But I can tell you unequivocally, we are united behind this person beside me. Chrystia Freeland has done a great job, and there isn't a single person in my caucus who would say anything to the contrary.
So that's MP James Maloney coming to a valiant defense of Chrystia Freeland. However, I find it interesting that he is either lying or hasn't been paying attention to the news, because he says there's not a single caucus member that would say anything against Chrystia Freeland. Well, they kind of did.
I don't think he spoke to the rest of the caucus members. Oh, you know why? It's because they haven't had a caucus meeting.
Shucks.
There you go.
Gee, whose fault is that, Brenda?
Technically, yeah, I was going to say technically Brenda Shannon.
Because you won't let... So how is it this guy talks to all the caucus every single day, but nobody else can talk to the caucus?
The caucus can't talk to each other.
But, kudos to him for trying to be a team player and trying to, stand up for Chrystia Freeland. But she's like, dead man walking at this point.
It's kind of cringe right now.
And her career as finance minister is in palliative care. It's only a matter of time.
The Bank of Canada has begun to shift its policy toward avoiding a recession as consumer spending is weak and the unemployment rate has grown a full percentage point in a year. What is your response to the central bank's growing concerns about Canada's economic performance?
Yeah, thanks for the question. As I said in my remarks, we as a government really recognize the pressures that Canadians are facing. We recognize the pressure that high inflation put on Canadians, on Canadian families, and we recognize the pressure that Canadians have been facing from high interest rates.
So in, normal terms, we saw inflation killing everybody. We saw it happening.
Didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything about it, but we saw it.
Oh, no, they did do something. They tacked on a carbon tax again.
Right, and continue to run massive deficit budgets to keep the inflation going. So, but wait a minute. So the central bank had said that they're really concerned about Canada's economic outlook, but all we hear from Chrystia Freeland and Anita Anand is, we have a AAA credit rating.
Can't eat a AAA credit rating.
We have the best GDP to debt ratio in all the G7 because you're using the Canada Pension Plan to offset that. But let's not talk about that.
Well, you can't live in a GDP to debt ratio.
And you can't live in a pension either.
Right. The government sees that Canadians are suffering because of their fiscal policies. And it's just like, look, we have this awesome credit rating. Isn't that great, you guys? See, everything's totally fine.
Right.
Canadians are experiencing poverty at rates that I don't know if I've ever seen in my lifetime.
The Great Depression.
Yeah, 25% of Canadians are currently living in poverty.
And rising.
That's horrendous.
And that's why a central element of our government's economic policy has been about putting policies in place that create the conditions that allow inflation to go down so that interest rates can come down, to lift that pressure off of Canadians and Canadian families. It's been good news for Canada and Canadians that inflation has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for 6 months in a row. And Canada last week became the first economy in the G7 to lower interest rates for the second time, having been the first economy in the G7 to lower rates for the first time. I was out knocking on doors in my own riding yesterday, and one of the things I heard from people was that high interest rates have been really a pressure and a concern for them. I heard from people who have a house, who have a mortgage renewal coming up. They were very, very aware that interest rates had come down last week, and they told me that that was a relief for them.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Did you sneeze?
I had a Freeland. Come on. You're telling me that you were talking to these people. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, it's Christopher Freeland. They're like, oh God, this lady again.
No, okay, they're the people that are still willing to vote for her, so they were probably happy to see her.
Right? Like, oh, tell me how everything's not the Liberals' fault and it's all the evil Conservatives' fault, Miss Freeland. Oh yeah, interest rates, were so high that's because of them and everybody else, but because of us, they came down 2 points. Oh, I'm so happy. Come on in for tea and crumpets.
Does anybody eat crumpets?
I don't know. There's probably a market for them.
Not in this economy.
There are two upcoming federal by-elections this September, following the loss in Toronto, St. Paul's. How critical are these by-elections?
Every election matters. We have strong candidates in both of those ridings. Speaking for myself, and I am sure Jamie will agree, our MPs, our caucus, our government, we are really focused on delivering for Canada and Canadians. We're focused on delivering on housing. That's what we're here to talk about today. We're focused on delivering to make life more affordable. We're focused on delivering economic growth.
You can be focused on something, but still not doing a good job of it.
Yeah. What I would summarize her answer as is, we don't know what to do. that's what it sounds like to me.
I think they're scared. Now, I know that one of the by-elections is for former NDP member Daniel Blakey. I don't know who the other is. Do we know if it's a Liberal, Conservative, NDP, etc.?
So the second by-election is going to be held in September, and it currently, or was, a Liberal riding, and it's the riding of LaSalle and Verdun. So it should go to the Liberals, but who knows? Who knows what happens, considering what happened in Toronto, St. Paul.
I mean, I don't expect it to go to the Conservatives, but even if it goes from Liberal to Bloc, for example, I'll take that as a win, because the Bloc always vote non-confidence on the budget.
Well, and it wouldn't surprise me if Blakey's riding went to the Conservatives, and this is the thing. You see the tick, tick, tick. More and more seats are being picked up by the Conservatives. Now, it's not going to really mean a lot. It's not going to shift the balance of power. They need like another 10 seats away from the NDP in order to do that. But still,
it's something. It's showing that the Canadian people are fed up.
Well, and this is what we predicted when we were talking about the boundary change back in the winter. And this is why we said, from a strategic point of view, from the NDP's or the Liberals' point of view, it would make sense to go to an election before the boundary change.
Yeah, but Jagmeet Singh isn't going to let something like strategy get in the way of his pension.
Right? So, but this is the thing, right? You're seeing this everywhere. You're seeing it in Toronto, St. Paul, and you're going to see it in these other by-elections. The blue wave is starting to build up steam, everybody. And with every new seat that the Conservatives pick up, it is scaring the bejesus out of the Liberals. And you can see it written all over Chrystia Freeland's face.